This was something really scary.
Attention. Do I have everybody's attention now?
Man, it's been a while since we've had the Sting intro. That freaking ruled. I miss it.
Just thinking the same thing. I can't remember the last time I've heard early 90s Stinger. So that's always warms my cold, dead heart.
Yeah, man. We're back with overtime. JD and I have been talking about doing an overtime for a while, and we just haven't been able to connect. And I'm here at work. As you can tell, I'm on my iPad, so the audio is not crisp. JD is on his phone. We were actually planning to do this last night, but JD had some issues going on at work, and so here we are. We're doing it. We're just making it up as we go along, but overtime on the Mike and JD Show Patreon.
Yeah, I had a thing with a student and a teacher, and it was just I can't talk about it legally, but it was a thing. And then we had practice, and it was like it is a thing last night. And then currently, I'm coming to you live from downtown Chicago, which I'm told is a war zone. And there's a dude in the park, Starbucks, and like there's a lady, with the pay park right next to me, and I got Astro here hanging out. As you can see, it's all downtown Chicago.
Right. I'm surprised you're not wearing your Kevlar and your gear and your helmet. And I don't see any overweight National Guardsmen trying to get at you. What's going on there?
Yeah, Meal Team 6 is taking a break. There are a couple taco trucks around, so they're probably hanging out there right now.
Yeah, they're just fresh off their deployment from Snack Afghanistan. It's been a long-running military joke when we see a hefty brother in uniform.
You sent me that, and I had a good crack up when I saw that.
Yeah, if you look into the comments a lot, like you can tell the military folks are underneath. They're saying the same jokes because that's been a running joke for a long time. Snack Afghanistan, Meal Team 6. Yeah. So we have a few topics. We're going to do the Mike and JD show, obviously, later this weekend, maybe even Monday. We'll talk about that. But I wanted to start off with some news. I think you and I are pretty well qualified and plugged in to be able to talk about what's going on with Andrade, man. His whole situation's a mess. Let me backtrack a little bit. So he was fired for cause. What that cause is, we don't know, but it was happened back in September. And the rumor was it was a wellness violation. I don't know if it's a drug test failure or if it was just like, hey, he refused to do a drug test. There's a lot of rumors and all kinds of stuff. We can't really get into it because we just don't know. Like literally nobody has like the real story. WWE did leak that he had some wellness violation issues, but they never stated that that's why he was fired for cause. We just know that there was a behavioral issue. He was fired back in September. Like a week later, he shows up on Dynamite, the 6th anniversary show. He attacks Kenny Omega. And so AEW had pivoted from Kenny Omega versus Kyle Fletcher. They're going in this new direction, Kenny Omega and Andrade. And then all of a sudden, he just never shows up again. And nobody knows why. Well, it comes out that WWE had sent AEW a letter for, I don't know if did they send AEW or did they send Andrade?
I believe they sent AEW a season.
Okay.
Dave will correct me. I have not read the Observer yet today, but I believe they sent AEW a season desist letter.
As we're talking right now, the Observer just dropped. I haven't read anything, but so they send AEW a cease and desist letter saying that he is under a non-compete. And then rumors a couple of days ago that he was under a 90-day non-compete and he was not being paid. I was like, well, that can't be real. That can't be legal. And they come to find out he's under a 1-year non-compete because if you get fired for cause from the WWE, you're not allowed to work anywhere in the U.S. as far as professional wrestling goes for up to a full year, unless it's like a subsidiary of the WWE or something like that, unless otherwise approved by the WWE. And they're not letting him wrestle in the U.S.
I thought it read that he had to sit the 90 because he got fired with cause.
And 1 year, dude.
I thought it was because he violated that he has to sit for the year.
No. So I just listened to Brian Alvarez this morning on my way to work. Him and Lance Storm, they did Wrestling Observer Live. So the 90 thing was not ever really the thing. I think people assumed that he was under 90-day non-compete because he was fired, but he was fired for cause, and they have it written into the language in the contracts that if you get fired for a behavioral issue, you can't wrestle anywhere else for up to a year. Now, the way Alvarez explains it, and he said this, it was explained to him. Lance Storm was on the show, said that when he wrestled, he didn't wrestle there, but when he worked there in 2019, he signed the contract because he actually raised the alarms like, hey, 1 year non-compete sounds pretty excessive. But Lance Storm, being a choir boy, was like, he's like, I don't think I'm going to get fired for cause. So he went ahead and signed it. And I guess I would assume that other people feel the same way. They don't expect that they're going to get fired for behavioral issues. So the way Alvarez explains it, and this is what I texted you immediately, by the way, when we were talking in our group chat, was that I guess that this would prevent him from walking into the arena and smack Sammy Guevara around as a way to get fired, so he can go back to AEW, which is what he was rumored to have done when he was in AEW to get out of his contract there and then go to WWE. Brian and Alvarez said that WWE puts it in the contracts to protect them from one of their stars coming there, getting fired on purpose, and then the very next week showing up to a competitor, which is exactly what happened. And maybe Andrade just didn't know that was in his contract. He also went on to state that there is no possible way that this can be legally enforced, and that if it were challenged in court, it would likely not be upheld. It seems like a scummy thing to do. I get wanting to protect yourself from that happening. Like if Roman Reigns decides, hey, you know what, he got a call from Tony Khan, and Tony Khan's offering him $20 million to no-show WrestleMania. All he has to do is get fired, and he walks in and slaps Triple H. So I guess that would prevent them in that unlikely scenario. But it's not pro-labor, it's not pro-worker, and I don't think it can be legally enforced, and I think the whole thing is kind of creepy.
No, I agree, and I said this in our group chat. I said I do think it's going to go with the 90. I do think it'll wind up being 90. They will let the guy go because this isn't legally enforceable. And now you're basically challenging Tony Khan to bankroll something. I don't think Tony is going to because it doesn't. Because now essentially what you're going to do is when you bring a contract like this to court, is now the whole work for hire situation is going to get attacked. And regardless of who's the president right now, this is not at that level, right?
No.
This is not going to the Supreme Court. So it's going to come out of whoever the judge is. And this isn't going to hold up in any court of law, right? No. But what they're anticipating is that it's a scare tactic, right? Because that's exactly, by the way, what CM Punk did.
Yeah.
Like CM Punk did the exact same thing. It was 90 days, and then they didn't make him like Tony, so you can go be on tomorrow. I don't really give a shit. Like,
right.
That's exactly what Punk did. They're trying to make sure that doesn't happen to them, but it already did happen to them. So if it was a real problem, if it was a real problem, then they would be suing AEW and Andrade. They're not doing that. They sent a cease and desist letter. A cease and desist letter is like the legal equivalent of please stop this. Like it's like a warning. We'll do something, and like they're getting their done. I think AEW and Andrade just give because Andrade has been super mellow about this because he knows it's not enforceable. Right. Yeah. I imagine they're working through back channels right now because the last thing TKO wants is to have, and you see what happens every time they're challenged. Like they have a history of very quickly.
Yeah.
What they're anticipating is that most people aren't going to have the funds or the wherewithal to drag it out legally. So you will get a settlement. He'll get released. He'll be back on Dynamite in 2 months. There's no way they can legally make the guy sit out for a year. You can't.
No.
You can't stop a person from earning a living for a year because you're mad at them.
Right. Yeah. It makes no sense at all. And Storm said that John Laurinaitis told him, well, this is just standard language in contracts these days. I don't think that's true. I don't think that's standard language in sports. I know there are non-competes for contract workers and things like that. You don't want to take, like say if you're working for this company and like you're there for years, and you want to go to this other company and take some of the like data with you over there to the competitor. I get that. You'd want to have a non-compete. It's like some type of language. I just don't think it's very fair to the worker. The companies do need to protect themselves and insulate themselves from stuff like that. There's got to be a better way to do it. And 1 year is extremely excessive. It makes no sense at all. In fact, Brock Lesnar had a non-compete whenever he got out of his deal, and WWE put in his non-compete. It was 7 years, and it said he couldn't do any combat sports for up to 7 years, and that was thrown right out of court. And he was in New Japan in a heartbeat, and then it ultimately ended up going to the UFC. So I think if this were like a point challenge, this is going to get tossed right away. But it's like, is Andrade going to challenge it? I'm curious if AEW is paying him. I don't think they would be paying him right now because technically he's not allowed to work. Yeah, could be paying him under the table, but I don't know. Nice guy Tony, he's a nice guy. He's keeping Jake Roberts under a deal, right? Like he's got a lot of people under a deal. They're not really being productive members of his company. I think it would be wild for him to do that here in this case. And it wouldn't surprise me if AEW now, since what happened with Andrade and Sammy Guevara and what happened with CM Punk and Jack Perry, it wouldn't surprise me that AEW would have similar language in their contracts. Alvarez did state that he talked to one person that said that he didn't think that was in their contract, but it wouldn't be surprising if they ended up adding a clause like that to their contracts too, because they have similar contracts to WWE.
They do have similar contracts. You have to keep in mind that these companies are rotten and vile, and they only look to protect themselves. And John Laurinaitis is also under investigation right now for being a liar and a creep. So consider the source, right? You can't stop someone from working for a full year.
No, especially in their chosen profession, and you just can't.
And all you have to do is look for the precedent set with Brock Lesnar. These are just scare tactics. And most people don't have the wherewithal, the financial capability to fight these things. Brock did.
Yeah.
Right? Andrade may. And depends on who is going to, if Tony decides to actually bankroll this thing.
I don't think he will. I don't think he will.
No. I honestly, I don't either, because if Tony Khan really wanted to disrupt the whole system, he can make all of his guys employees with retirement and benefits and shake the whole thing to the core, but he don't want to do that.
No.
So would it surprise me if Andrade was working as a scout for the Jaguars at this point? No.
Yeah. Or if they sent him to Europe to carry water for Fulham FC or something like that.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Or he's like,
consultant.
Yeah. Hey, Andrade, do you know anything about analytics? Can you work for an analytics company?
Right.
Because, like, what's the precedent there, right? Lex Luger coming to the WWF and working for the Bodybuilding Federation.
I was just going to say that. So, I mean, like, this is why I know there's a lot of, dude, you took some shit online, which I appreciated. Pedophile spark, and it made so many people angry. The one thing I was like, damn, one guy called Mike 50. Mike ain't that old.
Yeah. Well, actually, my hairline's being exposed today, so they might be right about that. Maybe I lied on my birth certificate.
Dude, I just like, it astounds me how much people will go to bat to defend their favorite company. Like, the second you're on the outs with them, you're shit, you're garbage. Like, they have no loyalty, which I told you, this is why socialism is a thing. Because these companies don't have any care for their workers. Like, all the people they have to, if they're a publicly traded company, the only people they have to answer to are their shareholders. And it's like, okay, that's what it is. Like, so who looks out for you? Imagine if there was some type of union where wrestlers could actually, protect themselves and each other. But
yeah. So I just need to make it clear. JD and I are not here defending Andrade. Andrade very likely deserved to be fired, and in fact, more information might come out. And WWE may have actually ended up saving AEW a big headache here, because more information might come out to where like AEW's like, oh, maybe we don't want this guy. We don't know the exact reason why he was fired. We don't know all the details. Andrade didn't clearly know all the details of his firing and his contract, and who knows what he knew before he went to AEW, before that cease and desist was sent over and he went back. I get the feeling we're going to find out, because all sides are leaking on this matter. And it's only a matter of time before this information comes out. I think it's a real possibility WWE actually ends up saving AEW a big headache here with this. But this isn't about Andrade. This is about like the principle of the matter. This is about being pro-worker and making sure the workers' rights are taken care of. And the folks that are pro-workers, they should be up in arms when it comes to this. But none of them have any balls to start a union. Actually, the only person that ever had any balls to start a union was Jesse Ventura, and Hulk Hogan rallied the troops against him and ratted his ass out. So I don't think it's ever going to happen. It would be nice, but it's just not a real possibility. Now, a similar situation happened in the NFL where last year for the 49ers, they had a linebacker that they brought in on free agency named Devondre Campbell, and he was starting most of the year because the original starter was hurt. And they said, "Oh, you're our starter, you're our guy." Well, then later, once that guy gets back, Drake Greenlaw comes back. Devondre Campbell, he wants his incentives. He's got an incentive-laden deal. He wants to get his reps, his tackles, his statistics so he can meet those incentives, right, per his contract. But now he's not playing as much because Drake Greenlaw is back. And now he's getting mad, and Drake Greenlaw gets hurt in the middle of the game. This is like, towards the end of the season. I would say they had like 4 or 5 games left. Well, Devondre Campbell refuses to go in, right? Now, typically, you would just cut a player on the spot. And they didn't do that, and here's why. They suspended him the rest of the year because if they would have cut him on the spot, he could ideally go work for the team that they're playing next week and show up on that field, right, and play against them. So they suspended him, they fined him, and they kept him under contract the rest of the football season. And then they cut him in the off season, and then he was free to go anywhere else. Now, surprise, surprise, nobody picked him up because it's not advantageous to do that. So maybe we get to a point where we have like these unions in place to where they would actually have protections for guys where if they do screw up and we can do suspensions, we can do other things, as opposed to cutting a guy and saying now you're not allowed to work for a full year because that's just not right.
Yeah, and that's where I'm at with this. And again, like pro football is so different than the wrestling wars
because they have a union.
Because they have the union, and that's what challenges everything. And you don't want to just get rid of guys and send them to others. I understand that. That is a terrible move, by the way. Like no one's going to pick you up because like you can't play. Like you're not a team player in that regard. I mean that's toxic, and that's a bad move. In pro wrestling, that might get you praised actually. Like if you're a big shithead, the other side can go, yeah, we'll take that guy.
And to your point, I don't mean to cut you up. To your point, had Andrade went in and slapped Guevara, and AEW fired him, and they didn't have a non-compete in place, he would have absolutely been on WWE that next week. 100%.
CM Punk. If they would like Nick Khan assumed you heard like Nick Khan and CM Punk both said they assumed that CM Punk would have a 90-day non-compete, or they would have had him on there a lot sooner, and it just worked out more advantageously to re-debut him at Survivor Series in Chicago. It worked out well that way, but they could have brought him on any time before that. And Tony Khan's attitude was like, sure, okay, I fired him. Like, if you're fired from a job, you should be able to go to work.
Yeah.
Like, you should not be able to not work.
Right, because you're not getting any income. And let's be honest, look, we both think Andrade is one of the most talented wrestlers we've ever seen, right? He's fantastic.
Yeah, he's also fucking gigantic cancer. No one's going to argue.
He is, but what I'm getting at is I don't think he has a degree in like medicine. Like he's not going to go get another job that's going to pay him anywhere near what he's making right now, unless he goes to like Chippendales or something.
Yeah, you could do that. He had to beat Smortos, who also is a practicing lawyer in Mexico. Although he may wish that he was at the moment, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
So is crazy.
Since we're on the topic of labor, let's bring up Ridge Holland. Okay. So Ridge Holland, look, we all know Ridge Holland was very likely on the cut list for NXT, and many were surprised that he survived the previous round of cuts. But he's been with the WWE for years. He was working NXT. He got called up to the main roster at one point. He hurt Big E, and then after a while, he was not really used as much on the main roster. Then moving him back down to NXT, and he gets an NXT level contract at that point, so no longer making main roster money. He's on NXT. He gets moved down and down the card. They even move him down to Evolve at one point. And the partnership with NXT and TNA is such that NXT has actually been sending TNA talent that they plan on cutting, right? So when TNA gets a look at them to see if, hey, would you want to pick this person up? And we'll let you get a look at them first, and because we're very likely going to cut them. No one's explicitly said that. I've just been looking at the pattern because it's happened time and time again. Like Cora Jade had a TNA run right before she got cut. Jakara Jackson had a TNA run right before she got cut. She ended up getting signed by TNA. I just thought that Rich Holland was like, hey, yeah, he's getting a tryout with TNA because he comes to TNA, has a pretty good match with Mike Santana. Then the next night he wrestles Moose and he breaks his foot. Ends up having to have surgery on his foot. He's out 7 months. Well, he just let everybody know last week while he's recovering from surgery that in November WWE has decided not to pick up his contract. Therefore, they're just cutting him while he's being injured, and for 6 months of his recovery time, he's not going to be able to earn a living. Instead of what they normally do when someone gets injured is they extend their contract for injury time and kind of hold them. I don't want to say hostage because they're being paid, but kind of hold them to the deal. They extend their contracts out. But this guy and Kylie Ray too. Kylie Ray just got cut while she's pregnant, right? Her contract's coming up due for WWE ID, and they decided not to keep her on, and she's pregnant. I think she's got a case there, to be honest. I think Rich Holland might have a case. I don't know how the contract law works, but I think that is completely scummy. I think Rich Holland got a bad rap, by the way. That thing with Big E was a complete accident. Now, do I think he's a world beater as far as a talent? No. Was WWE very likely to cut him even though he was not injured? Probably. All right, but to do so while he's hurt on your watch, and everybody's tweeting at me, well, he got hurt on TNA show. He was sent there by the WWE to work a TNA show. It wasn't like he took an outside booking and got hurt. Like, he was sent there by the WWE. Therefore, he's still WWE's guy. He's getting hurt on their watch, right? So I hope TNA actually picks the guy up. If I'm Carlos Silva and I'm wanting to get some goodwill, I pick the guy up while he's hurt. You might even get a discount that way. So like that wouldn't be the worst idea. But pick the guy up while he's hurt and pay him while he's hurt, because he did get hurt in your ring. I don't think they're going to do that. They don't have a lot of expendable income. I wish they would. But what do you make of this whole Rich Holland situation?
I do think he's got a bad rap. I think I mentioned this back when it happened. We had the show. I think the release overhead suplex is not a good move. You have no control. Like the way we do the belly-to-belly suplex from amateur wrestling, which is the way they used to do it. Shane Douglas, Magnum TA, Scott Steiner used to do it with a body twist and turn. It looks better. It's a prettier move. The way they do it now is you just grip the body and launch him, and it's all on the guy. It's all on both guys. One guy has to get it up air, and the other guy has to tuck his chin and roll. Whereas the other way, the dude who does the move is in complete control. And anyone who's got any kind of wrestling background knows how to land that thing. I was just working that same position with my 9-year-old last week. So I think the movement in itself can be dangerous, especially when guys are that big, because there's no control over it. So not a fan of the release overhead suplex. It's because of reasons like this. When guys aren't very good, this is stuff that can happen. That being said, it was an accident, and I think the guy has taken a lot of. Reminds me of D'Lo Brown,
yeah,
right, where D'Lo didn't do anything on purpose. Like that pop-up power bomb that he used to do is way safer than most wrestling moves, but it was an accident. It slipped, right? And I think that sometimes the guys who are on these ends of tremendous accidents, like Bret Hart never really forgave Bill Goldberg, but I don't know if Bill Goldberg ever went out of his way to be like, man, I really fucked up and didn't take care of it. I think that was part of the problem is Goldberg always just kind of went, oh, it's dumb. That was the attitude that was presented, because that guy never really cared. Rich Holland, for all the records, was pretty much beside himself with what he had done. I think releasing guy when he's hurt is pretty shitty. I think blaming TNA for any of this is even worse because he was on loan, right? Like, oh, TNA didn't pay him for that appearance. Like, well, yeah, because he's working his WWE dates. WWE sent him there. Like, TNA should be absolved of just about everything. I do think you're right. I think it'd be a good move for Carlos Silva if they were to pick up Rich Holland as a goodwill gesture and keep him employed, because it's not like he's worse than a lot of the people that are already there. He's only going to probably get better. Honestly, I've seen a lot of people get better working with TNA after leaving the Performance Center.
Yeah. Because it's a lot of people. Some people thrive better in an environment where they're not scripted beat for beat, and where they can actually have more freedom to be a little bit more creative. And sometimes people, and also it's not like this rigid structure of people overhead yelling at you when you're in TNA. I'm sure some of that exists, but you get a little bit more freedom, and you get a little bit more confidence in yourself. I look at Steve Macklin, right? I didn't know that guy existed. in NXT, and then he comes over to TNA, and it's like he's been unleashed, right? And he's had a really good career in TNA since then. W. Morrissey would be another guy. Deanna Prazo is another person. Like a lot of people just, and it's not like TNA are these creative geniuses for the most part. They're fucking idiots. But like their structure allows smart, talented, and creative people to be better versions of themselves. And Mustafa Ali is probably the best example of that. He's really thrived in TNA, and he went back to NXT last week and cut the best promo of his life, and then ended up having almost a 5-star banger with Ethan Page of all people. So the guy has gotten really good.
See, that's funny. Ethan Page is an example of a guy who is very, as the kids say, mid. But in that WWE system where everything is like pre-programmed, he fits in really, really well, and he's having probably the best. He's having the best run of his career in that system, right?
Yeah.
I think that some people that are it's interesting because he is Page is a very creative individual, but it seems like his talents just fit better in that kind of environment. Whereas some people who can't do. Some people need that, like, I need to be here, A, B, C, D. Others, like, need that creative freedom. Like, you know, and I would like to see Rich Holland in that type of an environment because we have seen, like you said, you mentioned 3 people all the time. Steve Macklin was the number one that I had thought of, right? It's, you know, no one remembers. He's literally a forgotten son. And he's been reborn. He's been TNA for probably almost 5 years now. And he's been...
He's been in TNA so long, I don't think many people even remember that he was Steve Cutler at one point.
Yeah, I didn't for a long time. So I think that would be good for him. I think that he can use another crack. I don't know. I have a lot of sympathy for this guy, mainly because I think that the pedophiles, as you refer to them, have turned on him so harshly where it's unfair because accidents happen. And it's not like these aren't. It's not like this hasn't happened in the history of professional wrestling. Like, you know, people get hurt, right? And it's like I said, he's probably doing shit he shouldn't have been doing. But again, in WWE, all that stuff is pre-programmed. Like your agents tell you move for move what you're doing. So I think there's a lot of culpability to go around. I think you're asking somebody who might not have had the strength or technique to do something they could have done, and you should realize that. But there's famous stories of you know, Michael Hayes being like, yeah, Jeff Hardy will jump off that big ass thing and land on its head. It'll be great.
Yeah.
You know, I think a lot of times these agents don't really, you know, aren't, not all of them. Maybe I'm being a little unfair, but I think a lot of times the agents they think about what looks cool more than like, is this safe? You know, and I think people don't realize the inherent danger of an overhead belly to belly suplex, the way that it's done in professional wrestling. I think it looks like shit. 2, I don't think it's as safe as the alternative. I'm going to maintain that to the day I die.
Yeah, I agree. And it's not like Rich Holland was this guy that they had to kind of untrain from his indie days. He didn't have indie days. He came in as a rugby star, and then they were training him essentially from the ground up. They had been recruiting him for years, brought him in as this real professional athlete, and then they tried to like mold him out of clay. So it wasn't like he had this overhead belly-to-belly suplex that he brought from Independence, and he's like, hey, I really want to do this. Very likely someone was talking to him about it, or he's watching tape with one of the agents and he saw Scott Steiner do it. Because I could see how, like, you see Rich Holland, he's built like a brick shit house. Like, what would Mike do? I would sit this guy down and like, here, look at Rick and Scott. Okay, that might be a bad idea if you're not trained at the University of Michigan, right? Like, if you're just a rugby guy, like those guys can pull those maneuvers off. And guess what? They also hurt a lot of people with some of that stuff, even though they were highly trained. But I could see that happening, and I doubt that it was his idea to put that move in his arsenal.
See, I have this theory that a lot of these performance center people speak. It's not just them. This happens in indie schools across the country. There's not enough wrestling going on in some of these places. Like a lot of these people don't know how to actually wrestle. Like Scott Steiner was a 3-time Division I All-American wrestler, so he had amazing body control, right? And I think that it's unfair to expect people to know how to wrestle. Like, dude, it's funny. Like, I watch like adults. I'm doing some I've been helping out with jiu-jitsu gym with Andy, and like they do adult wrestling classes, and I help out with them. And these people, grown adults, some are pretty athletic, can't like wrestle. Like they don't have the muscle movement and like the fundamentals aren't there that guys like me have been doing it for 30 plus years take for granted. And I think a lot of these these pro wrestler trainees who don't have an amateur background don't know how to move and don't know how to work, right? Like when I say work,
Yeah.
because a lot of wrestling is pro wrestling is wrestling, but you're working, you're moving through it, you're giving and taking. Like you don't have that. And I think it's a detriment to not allow some of these people to actually get on a mat and like wrestle with each other and understand
Right.
why moves work and how moves work. And I think that's why you see an uptick of injuries that didn't happen like back in the day when guys actually, shoot trained to wrestle. Danny Davis was beating the shit out of people back in the day, actually wrestling them. So like they don't have that background. I think that's important. I don't want AJ Styles was broke a couple necks with the Styles clash. He also lined a lot of people just fine. Like sometimes mistakes happen, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I do think Ridge Helms gets a poor knock on this, and I hope he gets another chance. I texted you. I was like, I hope somebody picks him up. I was like, I wanted if Tony would or something like that, just because I think this guy needs a redemption arc. He's not good enough to be on that roster, but I do think that TNA should.
Yeah, I think TNA should. And in fact, Moose, he got hurt working with Moose. It was just a freak accident. It wasn't like Moose did something to him. And Mike Santana, who both worked him that weekend, both publicly advocated for TNA to be brought in. And Santana was pretty emphatic that he is coming to TNA. Like Santana basically said that. Like he's Santana's the new top guy. I get the feeling he's got some sway around there. And it wouldn't shock me at all if we see Ridge Holland in TNA late in like 6